Welcome to Economics for the IB Diploma. This is Unit 2.1. Today we are going to focus on competitive markets. You have the learning objectives here. You can pause the video now. Let's start talking about markets, the nature of markets. A market originally was a place where people gathered to buy and sell goods. Such markets still exist today. For example, cattle markets, fish markets, fruit and vegetable markets, and flea markets, involving a physical meeting place where buyers and sellers meet face to face. Well, this is an introduction of markets. Markets date back to thousands of years ago, and they are still among us. So let me read a definition for you. The term market has since evolved to include any kind of arrangement where buyers and sellers of goods, services, or resources are linked together to carry out an exchange. So this is the definition of a market. A market is a physical and non-physical place where buyers and sellers exchange goods, services, or resources. That's my definition of a market. Now, the market may be in a specific place, such as a vegetable market that refers to a physical place, or it may involve many different places, such as the oil market. So this is still a physical place, but it involves many places around the world, around an area. Buyers and sellers may meet physically, that let's say that in a shop, or they may never meet. That means non-physically, communicating by fax, phone, internet, classify ads, or any other method which allows them to convey information about price, quantity, and quality. So markets can be physical and non-physical places where exchange is still carried out. A market, so we have defined these markets into physical and non-physical aspects, but we can also classify markets being locally or internationally. Let me read this to you. A market can be local, where the buyers and sellers originate from a local area. It may be national, in which case the buyers and sellers are from anywhere within a country. Or it may be international, with buyers and sellers from anywhere in the world. For example, as small neighborhood bakeries produce and sell bread and other baked goods for the local community. This is a local market. Local takeaway restaurants also produce for the local market. The labor market, on the other hand, tends to be mostly a national market. By contrast, the world oil market includes oil producers in different countries and buyers of oil virtually everywhere in the world, as well as wholesalers, retailers, and other intermediaries involved in buying and selling oil around the world. So here we can divide markets differently. For example, the case of bakeries producing and selling bread. This is an example of a local market, a market where people can buy and get the products locally. Now, the labor market, it's an example of a market, and it is normally aimed to be locally. However, the labor market can also be international. For example, if you need a specialist that you cannot find within the country, you may need to recruit people internationally. So the labor market can be local, but the more specialized someone is, you may need to get the services from overseas. The example here in the text about the oil market includes oil producers in different countries. And these buyers of oil are everywhere. For example, Venezuela produces oil. These Asian countries or Middle East countries produce oil, and countries from different parts of the world benefit and get their services, import this oil. So you have a market that works around the world. It's everywhere. Now, the term wholesalers here refers to people who sell in large quantities. Retailers, on the other hand, sell in low quantities. Wholesaler in Spanish is mayorista. Retailer, it's minorista. So, well, obviously you have wholesalers and retailers that work as intermediaries. An intermediary is someone or companies that are between others. Suppose Venezuela produces oil, so there is an intermediary perhaps in Europe who buys the oil, and this person distributes to all the European countries. He or she is an intermediary. Well, to conclude this part, goods and services are sold in product markets, while resources, factors of production, are sold in resource markets. What is the difference between these product markets and factor markets? For example, suppose that you buy popcorn. Okay, you can buy popcorn at the cinema. Well, this is something that you will consume. So this is an example of resources. I mean, product markets. You finally eat your popcorn and watch your video at the cinema. However, the cinemas also buy this popcorn to produce and sell you, and they need to buy in a market, perhaps from a wholesaler, people who sell in large quantities. They buy the popcorn. Of course, this is an example of a resource market. Resource markets are associated mostly with wholesalers. So this is also called a factor market. Okay, so that's the difference between resources in product markets and resource markets. Here you have a test, a section of Test Your Understanding 2.1. We have 2 questions. You can pause the video now, think about your answers, and then confirm and check yours. These are the answers, number 1 and number 2. You can pause the video now and check whether your answers are similar to this or not. Now, let's move on. We continue talking about markets. We talked about the nature of markets and now the meaning of a competitive market. We have defined what a market is. A market is a place that can be physical or non-physical, where people exchange goods, services, or resources. Now, what is competition? Let me read it for you. Competition is generally understood to be a process in which rivals compete in order to achieve some objective. For example, firms may compete with each other over who will sell the most output. Consumers may compete over who will buy a scarce product. Workers compete over who will get the best jobs with the highest salaries. Countries compete over which will capture the biggest export market. So competition is a process it can be defined as a process where two or three rivals compete to achieve a given objective. That could be the definition of competition. Just think about banks, your banks, local banks. There might be two, three, or four who are taking the lead. They're competing over who will get um, the most clients in this case. Think about anything. The market of cars. Think about two cars like Toyota, like Hyundai. They are competing over who will buy those cars. So the same happens with people who want to get a job. If you want to get a job, you need to compete. You need to compete with others so that you get the highest salaries. The same happens with countries. Uh, for instance, Chile is the leader in the export of copper in the world. Peru is number three, perhaps number four, and Peru is still competing. So with other countries to export that mineral, for instance. So that is competition. Beyond this everyday sense, competition in microeconomics occurs when there are many buyers and sellers acting independently, so that no one has the ability to influence the price at which a product is sold. This should be contrasted with market power, also known as monopoly power, which refers to the control that a seller may have over the price of the product it sells. The greater the market power, the greater is the control over price. On the other hand, the greater the degree of competition between sellers, the smaller their market power, and the weaker is their control over the price. Okay, so what happens with competition in microeconomics? And we suppose that in competition, there are many buyers and sellers. No one has the ability to influence the price. So in microeconomics, we are supposing ceteris paribus that nobody influences in the price, for example. Of course, in the real world is different. And here the text gives you the definition of market power. In the real world, companies are are not perfect, so we don't have a perfect competition, and that means that most companies aim high, and once they reach their objectives, they tend to have this control of the market. They have monopoly power. So the more they grow, they take over the market. And of course, this is negative for competition. Why? Because the more power these companies may have, the more control they have over price. So having control over price may not lead to competitiveness. Now, when there is more competition among companies, this is better because they have less control over price. So it's important to take into account this. Having control over price may be negative for competition and everyone. In this chapter, we will study competitive markets composed of large number of sellers and buyers acting independently. So no one individual seller or small group of sellers has the ability to control the price of the product sold. Instead, the price of the product is determined by the interactions of many sellers and buyers through the forces of demand and supply. I want to point this out. The price of the product is determined by interactions of many sellers and buyers, and this is a natural interaction caused by the forces of supply and demand. Well, this is the glossary of Unit 2.1. You have market competition in competitive markets. Thank you for today. Thank you.